Okay, so in this video here, we're going to be talking about polynomial long division. And before we start the problems, why don't we go ahead and do a quick review on actually doing long division and the different parts of long division. So off to the left-hand side here, you can see that I have a long division bar, and on the outside of that, we have our divisor. The inside is going to be our dividend, and then the quotient, what we get for an answer, will be up top, okay? Now, a couple of things to remember here. If you end up having a remainder, it has to go over your divisor. I put that right here. Okay, so if you get a remainder when you're doing these problems, it has to go over your divisor. Also down here, you must add zeros for missing powers. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at our first example and we'll start there. So here's our first example. And just to clarify, this whole part right here is my dividend. And this part here is my divisor. Okay. Now what you want to do before you even try to set up the problem is look for any missing powers. If I look at my dividend, I'm going from x cubed to x squared to x to my constant. I don't have any missing powers, meaning I don't have to put in any zeros. Now we will have examples in this video where you will have to add zeros, and that's coming up. But in this problem here, we do not have to add any zeros. So we're going to go for it. We're going to put in our long division bar. Okay. We're going to put our divisor on the outside, x minus 2, and then our dividend on the inside, 7x cubed minus 20x squared plus 13x, and then minus 11. Okay, so again, the whole point of doing polynomial long division, there could be a few different reasons as to why you want to do this. One of the biggest reasons for doing polynomial long division is you're trying to factor a polynomial that's not an actual quadratic. So like, for example, I have a cubic right now, this polynomial inside. I can't factor that using the quadratic formula or other methods for solving quadratics. So as a result, you may want to divide this. By dividing it, you go down a degree. So when I divide this one time, the new polynomial that I end up with, my quotient, is going to be a quadratic. Okay, and then you could factor from there, but that's for a different video. So sticking to this video here, what you want to try to do is you want to match this first term right here. Okay, so how do I match it? Well, what needs to go right here? Well, I need a 7, and I'm also going to need an x squared. So for example, if I put 7x squared here, I have to distribute to both the x here and the negative 2. So when I do that, I get 7x squared times x, I get 7x cubed. Okay, good. That's your goal. We matched it up. I don't care what happens after this. As long as we match up with that first term, we're good. So now I'm going to do 7x squared times negative 2. I get negative 14x squared. So negative 14x squared. And from here, you're going to put it in parentheses, put a negative on the outside, and then do the operation. So your first term should always cancel out if you do it correctly. And it will here, right? This will cancel out. That's what we want. And now this negative here, remember, you have to distribute inside. So this negative 14x squared really becomes a positive 14x squared. So when you do the problem, it's actually negative 20x squared plus 14x squared, which is going to give you negative 6x squared. Okay? Now from here, we're going to have to bring down a term. My next term is right here, 13x. So the terms that you bring down should always equal the amount of terms that you have on your divisor right here. So my divisor has 2 terms. That means I always want to have 2 terms down here at all times, meaning I have to bring down 1 term, okay? So I'm going to bring down plus 13x. And then again, I want to match this first term, and then I go from there. So how do I match it? Well, I need a negative 6. I also need an x. Negative 6x, right? When I do that, I get negative 6x squared, and then I get plus 12x. Put it in parentheses, negative on the outside, and then you do the operation, okay? So when I do this, my first term will cancel. That's what I want. Remember, this negative has to be distributed inside. It's really a negative 12x. So I'm doing 13x minus 12x. You're going to get positive x here. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that right here. And then I'm going to continue on with the problem up here. So I have x, and then I'm going to bring down this negative 11. And we have to do it one more time, and then we're good. So how do I match this x? Well, I'll have to multiply by 1. So plus 1. So 1 times x, I get x. 1 times a negative 2, I get negative 2. put it in parentheses and a negative on the outside, and then you just do the operation. So this will cancel out here. And remember, two negatives will make a positive. It's a negative and a negative 2. That becomes positive 2. So it's negative 11 plus 2. That will give us negative 9. So I get negative 9. That's my remainder. So we're all done here, okay? We're going to write our quotient, and then we're going to write our remainder over our divisor. So your final answer is the following. 7x squared minus 6x plus 1. And now you have to put your remainder. What is the sign on your remainder? It's negative. So I'm going to put minus here. And then 9 over my divisor, which is x minus 2. Okay, that's done. All right, it looks weird, but that is your final answer. Okay, all right, let's try another example. So here's our next example. And the first step that you want to do is you want to look at your dividend and you want to see if you're missing any powers. And I am here. You can see that I'm going from x cubed to x to my constant. So I'm skipping that x squared power, right? I don't have an x squared. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to do your long division bar and you're going to go right in order. I'm going to write x cubed. Now we have to plug in zeros for those missing powers. I'm missing x squared. So I'm going to put plus 0x squared. Okay. And then I go on to this negative 33x, and then you put minus 8. Okay. And the reason for putting these missing powers is so that everything will line up when you do long division. All right. And now we're going to put our divisor on the outside, x minus 6. So how do I match that x cubed? I need to multiply by x squared. So x squared goes here, and then we multiply. So I'll get x cubed minus 6x squared. Okay, put it in parentheses, and then a subtraction sign. And so you can see here that our 0x squared is now lined up with our negative 6x squared. If you didn't put in that 0, you would have had a negative 33x here, and you wouldn't be able to combine those terms, right? So it keeps everything organized by doing it this way. And so just doing the operation, this will cancel. The two negatives make a positive here. I'm left with 0x squared plus 6x squared. That will give me 6x squared. And then we bring down our minus 33x. And we do the same thing. Okay? So we have to match that 6x squared. I'm going to multiply by a positive 6x, right? So plus 6x. Remember, you want to match the sign as well. So it's positive. So 6x squared. And then I get minus 36x. Put it in parentheses, and then you're going to do the operation. So this will cancel right here. Two negatives make a positive. It's really negative 33x plus 36x. That will give me positive 3x. And then we bring down our last term, which is negative 8. So I'm going to restart the problem over here. So 3x minus 8. How do I match that 3x? I have to multiply by 3. When I do that, I get 3x and then minus 18. Put it in parentheses, minus on the outside, and then we go for it. This will cancel. The two negatives make a positive. Negative 8 plus 18. That will give me positive 10. And that's my remainder. So now we put it all together. Here's our quotient, x squared plus 6x plus 3. My remainder is positive. I put plus, and then 10 over my divisor, which is x minus 6. So this right here is it. All right, let's try one more example. Okay, so here's our last example, and taking a look at the dividend, you can see that I am skipping powers. I'm skipping that x power, that x to the first power, and I don't have a constant. So I have to make sure I include zeros for those missing powers. So going ahead and putting it underneath our long division bar, we're going to have the following. I'll have negative 4x cubed minus 20x squared plus 0x and then plus 0, okay? Because we're missing two of those powers, one of them being the constant. So I have to match that negative 4x cubed. I'm going to put negative 4, and I need an x squared. When I multiply, I get negative 4x cubed. Good, that's what we want. Doing my last term here, I get negative 20x squared. Okay, parentheses, and then a negative on the outside. So what happens here? This one's pretty interesting because my first term will cancel. Okay, good. And then remember, this negative is going to that negative 20x squared, making it positive 20x squared. These will also cancel out here, meaning I have nothing left down here. So remember, I have to match how many terms I have on my divisor at all times. So I need to bring down the 0x as well as the 0. So I'm going to bring down 0x and then plus 0. That way I have two terms, okay? And so how do I match the 0x? Well, I'll have to multiply by 0. And again, we know that that's just going to reduce down to 0 anyways, but we're going to write it like this for now. So 0 times x is going to be 0x, and then 0 times 5 is 0, okay? Again, we know that this whole part is actually 0. This whole part is actually 0. I'm just writing it this way. That way you can see all the terms line up, okay? So when you do subtraction, you can see that everything will end up canceling out, right? You're just left with 0, okay? So our remainder here is 0, meaning our quotient, our final answer by dividing here is going to be negative 4x squared. That's it, okay? We're done. No remainder here. Now, this remainder of 0 is pretty interesting because it tells you something, okay? My divisor is x plus 5, okay? If you set that equal to 0 and solve, you get x is equal to negative 5. So whenever you get a remainder of 0, that tells you the following. That tells you that this divisor right here, x plus 5, is a factor of this polynomial, your dividend, right here. Or in other words, if I were to solve this factor, my divisor, x equals negative 5, that's where this polynomial is crossing the x-axis. It's crossing at negative 5, okay? So again, something to think about here. If you ever get a remainder of 0, that tells you, again, your divisor is a factor of that polynomial being your dividend, okay? But this is our final answer right here, negative 4x squared, and that is it. That is how you do polynomial long division. So the key takeaways here, if you are missing any powers in your dividend, you have to make sure you include them. That way everything will stay lined up and everything will be organized, okay? And that's pretty much it. So if the video helped you, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you gained something from the video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you get more math videos in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.